All right, now that we got spring seedlings out of the way, let's get down to the cream of the crop. See what I did there? It's all about summer veggie seedlings today. You ready for this? This is what we're going to talk about, and it's going to be different than last episode. So go ahead and slap your earphones in, turn it up a little bit, because right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast, we're going to talk about starting summer veggies.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening. We are your hosts, Ben and Batavia, and you can find me gardening in the country.
And you'll find me gardening in the city. Get ready as we dig deep into this
wonderful world of gardening, where we learn to grow and grow for change. It's the cream of the crop day right here. You like that, didn't you, Batavia?
You're so greedy. You got the smile and the grin from me in the intro. And look at you, coming back for more.
Hell yeah, I'm coming back for more. Of course I am. Wouldn't you? So, it's going to be an interesting one today for sure. And just to reiterate, if you guys listened last week, there are differences. So we are going to kind of pick up where we left off and keep flowing in that direction. But there are some very big differences between starting summer seeds and spring seeds. And most people, I feel like, start summer seeds. So this will definitely apply. And if you don't, this is going to be a good way for you to start getting into that mode. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Batavia, before we get going anywhere, what's our spring countdown?
We're breaking it down into, we're not at single digits. We're at single weeks. Yeah, we're definitely at single weeks. So my count says, in my favorite website, Time and Date. Be careful what you ask for. We are under 40 days. We are at 39 days. Under 6 weeks until spring.
So the people who run timeanddate.com, if you'd like to get in touch with us, apparently we are big supporters of your website. So thank you very much. But no, that's getting pretty close.
So this is at the point where I could see the other side. Like it's going to happen. Like there are years where maybe it's never going to come.
Yeah.
That's how dark a winter can be. Right. But yeah,
this is the point
I can almost touch it.
This is the point when I lived up north where I would get the most depressed, because I'm used to at this time things really, you start to get glimmers of hope you get warmer days now, because that's what we're starting to get. We're starting to get those warmer days, and we'll still get colder days. But back then when I lived up there, man, it was still buck ass cold right this time of year. So
yeah,
but
if this is what this show is about, I could look up February temperatures last year on, again, one of my favorite sites. But since that's not the focus of this show.
Yeah, we don't want everybody to fall asleep on us. But what we do want to know is, what are you starting for summer? Give us your seed list for summer, roughly.
Oh, so all of the things. I'm going to do an experiment. And
always starts this way. Always.
I love a good garden experiment. So I'm going to start summer squash, like zucchini and yellow squash indoors. But which last year I think I direct sowed them, and the year before that I think I started them indoors. And both years they succumbed to, what's the dirty old bastard? Well, no, that was a whole rapper.
The Little Bastards.
The Little Bastards, squash vine borer. So it didn't make it through like a real harvest in either years. But I'm going to start them indoors for summer. But my experiment is I'm going to spend the $4 on a transplant from the nursery. Because I'm telling you, I've never had squash vine borer until I started putting out my own vegetable plants. So I'm just saying.
Really? Aww. I have. So I'm going to go ahead and debunk that, but that's okay. But what else are you starting? Seeds wise.
Oh.
So let's not talk about stuff you're buying. Seed wise.
Yeah. Well, I'm starting in those as well.
Oh, okay.
Laundry list: tomatoes, okra, cucumbers, melons, peppers of all kinds. What else for summer? I think I'm going to do some summer lettuces.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lie. They're not summer lettuces. That's not a thing. I'm going to do lettuce that is said to be heat tolerant.
Yeah.
I'm going to count green beans as summer because I don't know when the other time of year to grow them. So not peas, but green beans. No, I'm not going to start those inside. Which episode is this again?
Man,
Good
you
grief.
were crazy. What is going on today?
Yeah, I
so
know.
I want
I'm
to
all
say this
twisted
too.
around.
When I said, let's get back to what seeds you're starting, I saw a glimmer of old year Batavia. Look at me, cut your eyes at me, and I felt the cut down to my soul. So it made me a little nervous.
We're getting on the tail end. So maybe it is that you said this was the most depressing time when you lived in the North.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's where the old Batavia creeps back in because
Yeah.
she's held on with all of her hopefulness through the coldest times of winter and she just has no more to give.
Yeah, this was the time where I would seriously start all seeds I could just to kind of get going because I was so excited to grow food again. I would be so excited and I'd have so long to wait. This is really where I did all of my experimenting was this time of year doing exactly what we're talking about today. So my list is a lot like yours. Even down to the squashes, but I'm not buying squashes. I'm going to start them periodically throughout to try and beat the squash vine borer. So I'm going to succession sow them in multiple places, but I'm expanding my varieties. And if you go back and you want to listen to the new stuff we're trying, so I'm doing melons, okra, tomatoes, lots of peppers. I'm doing other stuff in the garden, but I'll leave that out. Brussels sprouts again, peanuts and soybeans, edamame to be exact, and then sweet potatoes, and that should about cover and chard like some heat tolerant greens, but that'll kind of give you an idea. And then there's other stuff that I'm going to direct sow, but I'm not really going to focus on that right now. We'll have a whole nother show about direct sowing at some point. Yes, ma'am.
So it's interesting because I am going to do sweet potatoes, but for whatever reason, I separated that in my mind. But you're totally starting them indoors.
Yeah.
Right? You know, speaking of some of my potatoes from last year, I've been rubbing off the chits, trying to hold on to them for a little while longer. Because I'm like, at this point, I'm pretty close to getting outside and being able to use these as seed potatoes.
Yeah, you need to send me, if you have some chittings, pop them in the mail.
I mean, I'm not saying all of that.
Seed potatoes.
Yeah. For regular white potatoes?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what?
Garlic and seed potatoes I can't find. It's killing me.
Yeah, your voice got way high pitched there. So,
it did.
You know what?
Because I'm fed up.
I may be able to do you that favor.
You gonna do me a solid?
No, I classified it as a favor because I want you to know that I'm tracking them. That's absolutely old Batavia seeping back in.
It jumped back in. But, you know, and if you're listening, which hopefully you are, and you think, well, see, you know, are you starting sweet potatoes by seed? Well, no, we're not starting them by seed, but it's still part of the process. There is a space on my shelf for sweet potatoes. So it's me starting slips and stuff like that. So we'll kind of talk about that because that's totally separates from spring gardening as well. In my mind, you?
It is, okay. And it does. I was just thinking to myself if I had a reason why. This will be the third year that I've started sweet potato slips, and in both of the years that I have done them, I've put them in my windowsill, which is really interesting given the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, and how little I do in my windowsill, and how I don't move those sweet potato slips to the basement with all of the rest of my things.
Yeah. Interesting. So before we go to break, let's just talk about sweet potatoes right now. Because,
good grief.
Well, I feel
like we talked about sweet potatoes all of 2021. Do we have to?
Yeah, we do. Because I'm trying something new.
All right.
So I had somebody reach out to me and they were like, hey, put your sweet potatoes in your greenhouse. And that'll help them form slips. Oh, so now all of a sudden you're interested, Batavia. I hear you.
I mean, I'm a garden lover. I mean, here we are. I'm committed now. All right, let's go.
So I had a thought. Like, it's cold in my greenhouse, and it's not heated really, and I'm pretty sure that I could, but I had a thought. I was like, why don't I put them on my grow shelf in a pan with a heat mat under it to create humidity, because the humidity and the light is what causes them to, I guess, chit. So I've thrown some potatoes in there, and we'll see. I've done things like burying them in dirt. I've done, putting them in water, and I'm always really late. So I started really early this year. So we'll see what happens, but I feel like keeping them real moist and with the light might help them. So.
Well, you know what? This is what why we shouldn't be resistant, because it just occurred to me that in my goal of starting sweet potato slips earlier is like now for me. Where is my schedule? That is not on my schedule. Good thing we had this episode and you insisted on talking about sweet potatoes.
We talked about sweet potatoes all of 2021. Here we are in 2022.
We absolutely did, and I'm still exhausted. Just because something good comes from it doesn't mean that I really, really appreciate it. No.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So on that note, I'm going to go and we're going to do take this break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about starting seeds in summer. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya.
We want everybody to have a garden, and we're going to give you a chance to win free seeds every month.
Head over to backyardgardenstv.com and enter your email address to be entered in all of our giveaways.
Good luck. Now that I've finished licking my wounds, I'm ready to go. You ready?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to pretend for the people that you're sensitive, then,
hey, I'm more
New
sensitive
Year,
than
New
you
Me
would
is
think.
going to... New Year, New Me will go along with this fairy tale.
Jerk.
Yeah.
So, for you, what is the first seed that you start for summer?
Little peppers.
Really?
First in. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mine's the almighty tomato.
So let's just chat about this for a bit. So the reason why I start peppers earlier is because I want those plants. They seem to grow slower for me indoors, and I want those plants to be of some size when they go out.
Yeah.
And tomatoes seem to be on a fast track. So I'm going to say maybe 6 weeks for tomatoes for me, from sowing seed to when I'm okay with them going outside. I feel like peppers, man, I could easily have peppers growing for 3 months.
Yeah, I have 10 weeks, or I'm sorry, 16 weeks is what I do for tomatoes and peppers. But I don't put my peppers out until much later than my tomatoes, like another week or two after. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Oh, I don't think I can do that math in my head and put it on a calendar all in my head.
Look, you act like I got this broken down like a science. When I give these dates, this is like in my head how it works. So it's rough. Everything is rough. Okay. I'm not organized. Oh, wait, I got to get my calendar. See?
Leonard needs to remind you to take a picture of your tomatoes when they go out, because this is where, again, 2 years into it, being the third year, maybe I'm putting my tomatoes out too small. Maybe I should give them more time in the grow room.
Well, then let's talk about the first difference in summer veggies versus spring. And that would be uppotting, right? So I used to think, back in the day, that you started, you all right? You good?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm feeling good, man. Stop trying to pull me into New Year old Batavia. I see what you're doing here. You like the dark side of Batavia.
I do.
Fighting through.
I do. But I used to think that you would go and you grow them in a seed pack, a 6-cell, and then that's what you got and you put them out. And for some reason in my head, now correct me if I'm wrong, you used to be able to go buy tomatoes in 6-packs. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
You know what? Oh, this is going to get good. So, yes, and you still are. So this is the marketing trap. I'm calling it. If I go to a small, nursery or something, I oftentimes see tomatoes in a 6-pack. And I can't say for certain, but I'm like 90+% sure that I used to see those in a 6-pack at your Home Depot or Lowe's. I still see them in a 6-pack at a different, Menards is one of the other kind of home improvement stores we go to. But primarily at Home Depot and Lowe's, I only see like big, like your single tomatoes, and you're going to pay $4, $5, $6 for it. So the marketing trap is you basically buy a single tomato for the price that you would buy a 6-pack somewhere else for.
So I thought that, but I don't see 6-packs in anything around me anymore. I feel like it's been a couple years since I have. And even though I agree with you where it's like it's the marketing trap, now that I'm growing them myself, like really like and spending the time to like up pot them and stuff. And I mean, you want to see pictures, I'll send you pictures or I'll put them on the Instagram. We have to set a reminder so I can put it on the Backyard Gardens TV Instagram. But my tomatoes are about a foot tall and they're in a 6-inch pot when I put them out, easily a foot tall. And they've been repotted once. So they're fairly large when I put them out. Now, if you do a 6-pack though, you don't get that. Right, you get a much smaller plant because they end up, and I mean, they end up getting root bound in there. So that's not really a terrible issue because we know how tomatoes grow. Well, if you don't know how tomatoes grow, they will readily grow roots out of their stem. Correct?
And if we break this down, when I say my tomatoes go out kind of small at 6 weeks, and I do some up potting. But at 6 weeks, let's call it, and it could be just a little bit longer. My tomatoes don't have, leaf upon leaf upon leaf, right? Maybe I may have potted it at like 4 weeks or something. Yeah. And based on my calendar, based on the time that my calendar has, now it's warm enough for it to go outside. But to your point, I can see and picture what my tomato seedlings look like in the 6-pack. And I've also seen those in the nurseries, right? I would never buy them in a 6-pack in a nursery in June, as an example, right? Like that tomato doesn't have enough time in my schedule to basically get to full size and yada yada. I'm delayed, if you will. And so I get where you're going. The part that there's work to starting them off, up potting them, more light that they require. All of that yields a different price point, I think is what you're talking about when it comes to, the regular home improvement stores and what they're selling.
Well, and you remember last year, and I mean, granted, this is going to be different for us because of our climates. But when I was like, "Hey, I just got my first tomato," and you were like, "Son of a bitch," yes, that's because I get warmer earlier than you. But it may also be because I'm also planting out much larger tomato plants than you are. That could be something that has to do with it. So, I mean, I had some pretty stout plants putting them out last year, and I was very happy with the outcome. So what I do is I start them in a 6-cell, and it's like you, like after 6 weeks or something, they've got like maybe 2 sets of true leaves, and then all of a sudden, they just they shoot up. And so when they do
give
that,
them some more soil,
you'll notice that difference when they shoot up, and that's when I repot. And so I do the whole thing like you do when you put a tomato in the ground. I clip off the bottom leaves and I bury it as deep as I can. And then it's not long before I'm having to take them outside in the daytime because I don't have room for them anymore. They're just too big, So that's, you don't do that for broccoli. You don't do that for cabbage or anything. I mean, you can, but the idea is not to. But for tomatoes, you definitely up pot. And I do the same with my peppers too. So I definitely up pot my peppers as well because, again, I don't put them out until it's pretty much well into the 50s at night. So I put them out and I just let them get as much sun as I can during the day, and I leave them out. And they may stay out for a week at a time, and then I pull them back. But they're still growing because you can apply it like it's container gardening, kind of, until it's time to put it in the ground. You know what I mean?
No, I didn't quite catch that.
So, like, a lot of people... And I was definitely like, I used to think like, oh, I've got to get out of this pot. I got to get out of this pot. It's not going to do anything. But the fact of the matter is that plant is going to fill that pot up with roots before anything happens. And if you're up potting, it's going to take a long time for it to do that. So it's the same concept as like, okay, just treat it like, hey, this is a little miniature container garden for right now. And then when it's plenty warm, you put it out. So I'm continuously growing, and they've been hardened off for weeks and weeks. I just need the ability to bring them in because I don't want to cover stuff up in my yard. I don't like doing that.
Yeah.
I don't have enough towels.
Well, there's the, I was talking to a friend's wife, so a colleague's wife, and we kind of trade garden, like experiences, secrets, or whatever. And she does primarily container gardening. And I don't remember, we've talked about this before. I just don't remember where you and I have. And I remember seeing pictures of her tomatoes, maybe in like June or something, July, maybe. She was getting tomatoes much earlier than I was. And she had tomatoes out in her garden much earlier. And when I was talking to her recently, she said something like, well, you know what? You can just cover it if you're worried about, the weather. And in my mind, again, she could pull together her containers and cover them or whatever have you. But that's not primarily the way I'm growing tomatoes. But it's something to note, right?
That is a huge benefit to container gardening too.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And then something else to note, fruiting plants versus a lot of our spring crops, while they may come to a head, if you will, they're not necessarily fruiting, right? And that growing pattern is a bit different than, like you talk about, you don't up pot your spring vegetables.
Right.
I don't have a great run with starting spring vegetables inside. So there's that. But in my mind, I have plans on up potting them, but that is something to consider, about, maybe it's not needed, but the speed in which the summer crops seedlings grow and the amount of time that you're really trying to get ahead of things when it comes to summer crops. That's why it makes more sense to me for the need to up pot. And so the only reason why you would not would be those veggies for summer that just don't like their roots disturbed.
Yeah. Which
in many cases, the recommendation is to direct sow them, but I push the envelope because that's how I roll.
Yeah, and I have thoughts about that too. So, well, let's just go into that. So there's things like, if you go back and you look at spring, I can't think of too many things that don't like to have their quote unquote roots disturbed. Okay, I can think of like peas and then root vegetables, and that's kind of obvious for me. But when it comes down to it, like there are. Let's see. What do you know of that doesn't like his roots disturbed for summer?
Well, the word on the street is squash.
Squash.
Like, I've almost always, well, anyway, long and short of it, I've not had any issues with transplanting squash.
Well, and they sell them all the time at the stores.
That's my exact point. Before I started them myself, I would buy them from the store.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm transplanting them.
Now, you don't have to do anything crazy either. I don't mean to interrupt you, but a lot of the knowledge that you can get just comes from walking in the store and looking at the seedlings.
Mm-hmm. It's no interruption because you could see the pondering. Like I was trying to get my next thought together, so there was going to be some dead air there.
That was me trying to fill that space.
Yeah, I appreciate the preemptive strike. Yeah. So I've read okra, but again, I go back to anytime I've grown okra, I've transplanted it, whether I've purchased a starter or in these last recent years, whether I started it indoors. And generally speaking, in both of those, well, I mean, you can't really speak of squash and try to figure out what's the cause of your trouble with squash, because clearly that's a whole thing. But I've had no trouble with okra. No trouble whatsoever. So I can't even say I could think of, the plant may have been more prolific if I had, no. I think it's, at least in my experience, it's been fine to direct sow. Like you said, I would guess, have I heard beans, or I'm mistaken that was peas?
Yeah, beans, cucumbers, melons. There's a lot of them that just, air quotes are flying right now, don't like to have their roots disturbed. And if you go to the store and you're buying seedlings, you look and you're not buying you're buying all of those from seedling except for beans. I've never seen a green bean as a seedling. I could be wrong.
Me either.
But
I've seen peas for spring,
I haven't
but not
seen peas
green
either.
beans.
Yeah.
I have.
So-
which actually brings me to the point of just because it's there.
right.
But
So a lot of these
I think
things,
it's generally a guide.
except for peas and beans, I agree with Batavia and root vegetables. I agree with Batavia. And if they don't like to have their roots disturbed, I still start them from seed inside or outside, but I start them in pots outside and I don't let them go more than 4 weeks before I put them in the ground. So when you go to buy your squash seedlings, go buy a squash seedling, take a picture of it, and then start a squash seed in a pot, and then go back and see when it makes it. That squash is only about a month old when you get it.
Yep.
You know, it's not that old. It barely has its true leaves. So at that point, here's my theory. You ready? Drum roll, please. Roots being disturbed is that they don't like to be root bound. That's it. I think that as long as you don't let it get root bound, you're going to be good. Right?
Okay. I don't think I agree, but it's okay.
Well,
That's
you've
your
been
theory.
planting it all this time, right? Have you ever pulled one out of a pot that was absolutely root bound?
No, but I think that I think that the intent of they don't like their roots disturbed is separate and apart from things that have gotten root bound.
Well,
I just think they're two different things.
yeah, because I mean, when I think of roots being disturbed, I know there's multiple definitions out there. But, you know, usually when I pull a plant out and I'm going to plant it, it depends on what it is. I'll take and spread the roots out with my thumbs and kind of make space around them so that they'll lay flat and then the roots can grow out instead of just kind of continue to grow down. So I'm imagining that. But also I know that when you pull that plant out of that pot, it creates stress on the plant, right? And I feel like that's what they're talking about. So if you don't have your roots all bound up and hitting the sides of the pot and stuff, maybe it's not that big a deal. Because I've never pulled one out that was like, oh wow, there's a lot of roots. And I've even put some like winter squashes and stuff in and they grew fine. They just took a long time to settle, I will say that. Because you know how plants have to kind of get settled in?
Yeah. Anything needs that in their new home.
So, but that's one big difference between spring and summer is you kind of have that root disturb policy going on.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to, since we're throwing out theories, I think it's more of those roots that are very fine. And so tomato roots can go wild, right?
Yeah.
You've heard no one ever say that. You even have people that kind of tease out roots when they plant them.
Yeah.
And on the flip of it, we're talking about plants that we're saying that perhaps don't like their roots disturbed. I think let's take a look at what those roots look like if you are starting them inside. And if we see a difference in they may be very fine roots compared to, and more difficult to bounce back compared to those that are, more hardy, if you will. Root vegetables, it's very, very simple because the thing that, it's the root. The root is the thing that you're going to harvest. So I get the idea of like starting that in one place and then trying to transplant it. Although I have seen a couple of people do that with beets.
Yeah, I've never done beets. I've heard that they really don't. But again, that's a root crop.
Yeah.
So I don't really mess with, anything root crop. I don't really transplant. I don't know why. Maybe I should try.
It's on my longer list, but I have a bunch of things to try. I don't necessarily have enough room. I don't want to make any more room to start any more indoors.
Right.
And I can wait because if we go back to the basics, we're getting ahead of the growing season. There's only so many growing days that I have outside for summer crops. And for many of the things that I named, with the exception of like your squash and your cucumbers, many of these other things that I named, if I direct sowed the thing once the weather warmed up enough, I'd never get to like a real harvest.
Right.
The growing time that I have is just too short outdoors. So I'm starting that earlier. But these root crops, a lot of these that we're talking about for summer, I'm okay with going from like direct sow a seed to harvest in that window.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's, and that's why I start my tomatoes and peppers at the same time, because I get to beat that kind of, even though I have a fairly long growing season still for a pepper, it's not that long. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I've just committed in the moment. This is totally new year, new Batavia.
Yeah, it is. I can hear it.
Yeah. Like in the moment, I'm going to start because I'm still like a week off of starting my tomatoes and, at the airing of this tomatoes my peppers, I'm still like, I'm going to start them in February versus in March. And, maybe I'll start them at the same time this year.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is I could have some deficient plants because this gal refuses to do things like fertilize as these things get larger, right? And worst case scenario, about halfway through what would normally be up to the point where it would normally be my starting time, maybe I just start another round. We'll see.
Yeah.
Because remember, I'm also trying to put things out a little bit earlier with the understanding that if they get damaged, I'll have a backup, right?
Well, yeah.
There's a lot that's going on.
I think that's a big thing about starting seeds too, is it allows you to push that envelope without that stress and worry because, I mean, yeah, you can go and buy another seedling, but who wants to go spend another $4 when you're just like, hey, I've got one right here ready to go. Did nothing to start. I didn't even use any extra space. Like you had a 6-pack and so that's one reason why I used a 6-pack seed cells. And usually I always start 6 of everything in that pack. I don't do like one half, like 3 of this and 3 peppers and 3 tomatoes in one. I just do it because I'm like, no matter what, even if I wanted to plant 2 or 3, I'll have extras. There's going to be an attrition rate. I'm going to screw something up. I guarantee you your boy's going to mess something up because I do it every year.
Yeah.
How many, what I did last year?
What did you do last year?
I put in a tomato plant and then I cut that bitch right in half. I put it in. I had to pull it out and start over. It's just, it happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All you heard is timber.
Yeah.
So one of the struggles that I have is kind of with the idea of the 6-pack. This is actually a personal struggle that I have when things are kind of designed for a family of 4+, and that's not my, my home family. And so how do you cut back? You could cut recipes in half, yada, yada, yada. So the 6-pack, what I've done is things like okra and cucumbers I start at the same time. And I'm pretty sure I'm pausing, maybe okra for sure. I'm pretty sure that I up-pot one or both of those. But anywho, what I'll do is I'll split the sale, right? So 3 of them will be one thing, 3 of them will be another. That's exactly what you said you didn't do. But the reason why I do it is because I don't want 6 of the thing in my garden. A great example is I'll do this for tomatoes. I'll use a 6-pack. If I have 2 different types of tomatoes, which I always will, I'll do 3 of one variety and 3 of another. The only pain in the butt it is, especially for a like plant, is trying to keep them straight. So that requires like proper tagging. But if it's a different vegetable that's growing at the same pace, that's the key, then you'll be able to tell the difference between the leaves and, kind of as the plant grows up, what it looks like.
Yeah. So I've learned to tag everything. Because I can't. I'm like, oh yeah, this will be. And then every time I get to, I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is. So I just tag everything. I call it what it is. I'm good. But it's, and that's the beauty of this is everybody can have their own method. Now, for instance, I myself only like to grow 1, maybe 2 okra plants, maybe. And so I would probably, like in that scenario, I would probably either do that or I would start them, like I have some little like 4-inch pots, like singular pots. I may actually start them in that so they're already separate and they can grow even longer because going back to roots being disturbed, I had traditionally always started them from seedlings from a store. In the past 2 years, I planted them directly in my garden, and I wasn't impressed with the way they grew. So that being said, I'm going back to starting the seed. And this year will be Cajun, jewel, okra, just for the record.
Yeah.
What do you mean, yeah?
Yeah. I'm thinking
Does
out.
Does it make you sad?
No. I'm trying to digest I think I did that with okra as well. Like both of them were 3 and 3 of okra, recognizing I wasn't going to, I fully had plans on putting all 6 out. I think I didn't articulate the challenge that I face. The 6-packs lead me to start more than I really want to start, even with the attrition, I've just not in these last couple of years been in a position, and maybe it's the pandemic, I don't know, to offload those extras. And it does add a tinge of what do you do with what's ultimately a healthy seedling, a healthy transplant. But anyway, that's my issue.
Yeah. And I agree with that too. I mean, because you don't want to spend the time or the resources raising a 6-pack and then only using 1 and getting rid of 5. So there's that.
Come on, say that for me. Yep, that's what I meant. That's when you edit this, please edit it so it's my voice that says those words.
Okay, I'll deep fake it.
Yeah.
And then I'll start the list on everything else I'm going to deep fake. I love growing herbs. They are the best. That's going to come from Batavia's voice.
Oh, shoot. I've authorized you to do one. Now it's completely open. As I watch, I'm on season 13 of Law and Order. It's you open the door, counselor. That's one thing that the judges always say. Yeah. Okay. I get you.
Are you really going back and binge watching Law and Order?
Mm-hmm. I am. It is something that I can fall asleep to. I can multitask to. I know what to expect.
Yeah.
There's a comfort there.
We are so different.
Mm-hmm.
We are so different.
Isn't that the best part of us?
So right now, totally off the subject, I'm watching Below Zero. The reality show in Alaska where all the homesteaders and stuff.
Oh.
Yep. And one person is, as a matter of fact, they grow 80% of their food in their garden in Alaska. So
interesting.
Yeah, they built a greenhouse on their homestead. It's interesting.
I've not heard of it. And I like reality TV shows. I've done a lot more dramas and scripted shows. And yeah, I used to be a real big fan of them, or at least someone that watches them often. And I don't so much anymore, but I do. That is intriguing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So anyways, back to the subject at hand, though. So we've talked about up potting, which is totally different. We've talked about root disturbing, which is different. We've talked about slips, sweet potato slips, which is different, right? Mm-hmm. What else is different from spring seeds that you know of? Can you think of anything?
I think there's more opportunity to succession sow indoors.
Depending on where you live, I would say.
Yeah, very good clarification. I was trying to figure out if there was a name that I could give succession. So, is it something different? But anywho, very good point. So things like cucumbers, I can, in my area, I'm in zone 6, whoop, whoop. I can succession sow those if I so choose. New year, new me. I'm not going to even acknowledge that.
That was so innocent the way you looked at me too. It was so innocent. I know
the place you're trying to take me. Nope. Zone 6 is going to be enough. So cucumbers is a good example. If you were starting beans, which makes me really, because I don't think I've ever tried it indoors. And so now I'm kind of like,
yeah, I'm not going to make any promises. That's my problem, is I just don't need to.
I don't need to either, but I'm just like, But if I were to do something like that, let's see, summer squash, you could do that as well. Succession sow, indoors, succession start. I don't know. You guys get what I'm saying.
Why is it that succession sowing is so much better indoors for summer vegetables versus spring? I'm setting you up there.
I know, and you're still trying to pull this, given you're still trying to figure out how much of New Year, New Me is left, because I hate this all year long. All year, Batavia hates this. So I believe my view on this is that your season is longer to grow these crops than it is for your spring garden. I like to look at it for my spring garden, which I'm uber excited about this year. It's kind of almost one and done. Right. I think lettuce is a great example of something that I could, sow a couple of times outside. But, kind of your brassicas and things I'm getting them in, and if they don't bolt, I'm getting them out, just that one round of them. But summer crops, especially, so let me clarify, summer crops that have a short from seed to harvest time frame, and squash and cucumbers are those crops for me. I believe you can succession sow tomatoes where I really can't.
Don't talk about what I want to talk about next. Don't do that. That's old Batavia New Year.
That's what happens when you give me the setup. There's an alley-oop happening here, and guess what? So I'm bringing down the rim.
So typically, I have not succession sowed tomatoes, and this year will be different because I can, in fact. So first of all, I get a disease every year that wipes out my tomatoes. And so this will allow me to say, oh, I have a disease. Let me get it out of here. Cut it out and then get another one in. Right? That is in memory of Bob Saget. So even though he didn't do it, but it was Full House. So we're going to do that this year for sure. And just in general, like when things start to die out, like it'll be nice to have an extra tomato around. Now it's funny that I kind of brought up disease because it's the same for cucumbers. When my cucumbers succumb to disease, which they inevitably will, I will be able to put in another cucumber right there.
Yeah.
If I decide to do so. Same with the squash and stuff like that. And so it can be as a fail safe because, the squash vine borer is going to come. So boom, we can put another one in. Or we can we can prolong our harvests on these things because some things will kind of die out. I don't want to say die out, but they just really stop producing as well. I feel like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. And it's not a nut I've been able to crack. But I kind of feel like it's not something that I've really tried to dig into. I just accept it for that's the way that my garden is. Like I've never, ever gotten a cucumber plant as an example from planting all the way through like frost.
Yeah, me either.
Right. Even all the way through like cooler weather. Right. So the plant, whether or not it's producing or not, I haven't even touched on. I'm talking about the plant remaining healthy. You talked about kind of spreading your harvest out, but there's also something to be said about, and I don't remember if we mentioned it last week, but also when it comes to summer crops, and mainly for summer crops, because now the bugs are out. Your good and bad bugs. And the idea of what you're starting indoors, the assumption is it's a stronger plant going out.
Yeah.
Right. Versus the thing you're direct sowing. Because a lot of what we've talked about, a lot of people can direct sow. Right. If you kind of remove peppers and tomatoes, maybe eggplants, which no one's mentioned yet, but they are on the list. Shame on us both.
And I'm definitely growing eggplants.
Yeah, a couple of those things, you just need a longer timeline. But these other things you can direct sow. But they're going to come from seed and emerge, and they're going to have to fight off whatever is going to attack them. And so if I can give my cucumber plant as an example, a head start from a timing perspective, and even give it a better fighting chance with that second round that I've started indoors. I mean, I want to do that.
Yeah. Now I will succession sow for spring vegetables. I will succession sow lettuce continuously throughout the year. I'm going to try that this year. I'm going to try and keep a lettuce harvest of some sort. Once things start to warm up all the way as much as I can, I'm going to really start that because I feel like that's kind of the missing piece to my puzzle. And other than that, though, as far as spring goes, because like kale, I mean, I can harvest a whole kale plant instead of cut and come again, but at the same time, like, why would I want to? I get tired of eating kale. And I mean, I've got a lot of really big kale plants right now, and they're kind of making me tired of eating them. So it's a nice break. But, when you go into like direct sowing into the garden, which we're not really going to touch on too much here, but succession planting, there's a lot of that going on with summer, and there's none of that for spring.
So let me ask you something unrelated to succession sowing indoors. There's a window for you. I was trying not to be you there. Is there a window where you have your spring seedlings indoors and your summer seedlings overlapping, like they're both on the growing shelves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now I had to leave. I have 4 shelves. Is it 4 or 3? I believe it's 4. I have 4 shelves, and I had to leave one of them empty so I could get my first batch in. And if my timing is right, which I really hope it is, then I will be able to do that. And so last year, this is where I screwed up, is last year I went through and I filled every single shelf up. But when it was time to up pot, I had no room for anything. And I had plants like overflowing outside. I was like, oh shit, what do I do? I was moving stuff in the greenhouse. I'd be praying like, please don't die. Please don't die. I just didn't have enough room. So, there's that issue. But so hopefully this year I've kind of, because I'm trying to do again, last year was the first year where I grew every single thing by seed that I planted. So this is the second year that I'll do that. So that was a learning curve. So this year there'll be more. But now that I know how much space when I up pot my tomatoes are going to take, they're going to take a lot. You know what I mean? So I can start one 10 by 20 tray and I get 36 plants out of that. But then when I take those 36 plants, and there's going to be, we're just talking your nightshades. So we're talking tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. And I put those into the 6-inch pots that I up pot in. Then you all of a sudden now you're going into extra space because that same tray that's 10 by 20. This is what I learned last year. 10 by 20 holds 36 cells of plants. It only holds 6 plants in a 6-inch pot. So you can see how like one will take up all of my space. So and each shelf holds 4 trays. So I can't even get a whole tray of 36 cells on when I up pot them. So I have to keep that in mind. Does
I ended
sense?
up getting a second. Yeah, it does. I actually just defaulted to getting a second shelf.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I've limited out on my, I have to like limit myself. This is what I have to work with. And, I had a third shelf in my cart and the coupon code that I was going to use expired.
Oh, and it's probably a blessing. Yeah, well, I didn't buy it because it expired. Yeah. But it probably works out better, so it's, instead of like basically buying another shelf, which means buying more lights, perhaps, this gal should really evaluate what I'm starting, what I need to up pot, right? How soon I'm getting things outside to harden off. We didn't talk about herbs, but there are definitely some herbs that I'll be planting out in the summer that I'll start indoors, things like basil. I've had cilantro on my list for a couple of years to start indoors, but I don't think I ever get to it. I don't know why.
Yeah, I missed cilantro all the way around last year. It kind of upset me. Yeah,
because I think in part, cilantro is just one example, but there's also the whole idea like it really likes it cooler anyway.
Yeah, damn. You know what year I'm going to go start cilantro right when we hang up. Yeah. I'm going to start my cilantro. But look, let's not trip. I got to do the recipe of the day. If you guys want some Backyard Gardens gear,
go to the link below and check out our t-shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and other gear.
All purchases go towards helping to support the show, so thank you so much in advance, and we hope you enjoy.
We want you to be a part of our gardening community. DM us a picture of your garden at Backyard Gardens TV on Instagram, and we will share it with our listeners.
All right, it's cold days. So you know what that means? We're going to take our sweet potatoes from last year and we're going to take our beans from last year and we're going to make black bean sweet potato chili. So, yeah. Super easy though. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just ready for it. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah. So, and I take that back. Black beans are something I'm growing this year. So next year we'll be doing them. You're going to take 3 sweet potatoes. You're going to dice them, peel them, dice them. And I use dry beans. So if you're going to use dry beans, soak them, do all that stuff. If you want to use canned beans, it's 2 cans of beans and then 1 onion. And then I add in some of my kale. So I add in a handful of kale leaves, chopped up nice finely, de-stemmed and all that stuff. And I put mine in a pressure cooker. So if you don't have a pressure cooker like an Instapot or something like that, you definitely cook it on the stove. And basically what you're going to do if you're going to cook it on the stove and you're using dry beans is you're going to either time for the dry beans to be done. That's how you're going to use your time. Or if you're using canned beans, then you need to time for your sweet potatoes to be done. So either one. But I used a pressure cooker and I put the onions in. I put the black beans in after they soaked for a while, and I put the sweet potatoes, and then I put 2 tablespoons of chili powder, 1 tablespoon of cumin, 1 tablespoon of thyme, 1 tablespoon of paprika. If you have smoked paprika, good. And if you don't have smoked paprika, then you can put liquid smoke in. And I just gave it a good, healthy squirt of liquid smoke, and then salt, pepper, and you stir it up. And then I squirt a little bit of honey in just to give it a little sweetness. Stir it up, and then I pressure cook mine for 8 minutes because that's how long it takes to cook the beans. If not, and you're using dry beans, then I would cook it. I would saute the onion, and then I would add the beans, and I would start boiling them with the potatoes, and I would do that, and I would get it to a boil, and I would simmer it for about, I would say about 3 hours. Probably is what it's going to take to cook the beans. Maybe less. Just keep an eye on it. Keep messing with it. But, I forgot to tell you. 2 cans of tomatoes, 2 cans of fire roasted tomatoes. Whew, lost that. So I was able to use my canned tomatoes from my garden. This year I'm going to can my own fire roasted tomatoes as well. So I got to figure that. I don't even know what that means. But, and then 2 tablespoons a can of tomato paste. Damn, I forgot like the main ingredients. So potatoes are shaking their head.
I was like, did I zone out? What's the liquid here? Like, did I miss something?
Yeah, and then you add 2 cups of water, and you can use a broth or something like that if you want. If you use dry beans, I put 4 cups of water in because it's going to use more. So there's a little bit of, a lot of people like using dry beans. Some people don't. So you just go back and forth. But other than that, you just cook it, and it's delicious. And then when it's done, I like to add saltines into mine. And some people, my wife, she likes to add in tortilla chips. And I add saltines. So you can do that, cheese, a little bit of hot sauce.
What's the name of this again?
Sweet potato black bean chili. I don't know.
So I watch Yellowstone.
Dude, everybody keeps telling me to watch it.
Yeah, Google the show, decide to watch it or not. I've recommended it to a trusted friend, and they've not been able to get into it, and I get it, but I'm a fan. So anyway, in one of the recent episodes, kind of closing out the season, there was this argument about if beans are added to chili, is it really chili? So I guess maybe in Texas, you don't add beans to chili. I'm a lover of beans, so...
There's all kinds of different kinds of chilies, though. You could have an entire cookbook about chilies.
Yeah, for sure.
And the only thing they have similar is they all use chili powder. So,
I'm
except for
down,
maybe a white
man.
bean chili.
This is probably not. This is the first time in a long time that I've started writing down the recipe because I didn't want to wait for like the episode to air.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I am all about this.
So the conundrum I had, though, is I was like, all right, I'm going to make a big pot of it, and then I'm going to can it. And I'm going to have cans of chili, right? So then I go to do it, I'm like, well, shit, I didn't look it up. So the potatoes are like real soft, so if I pressure can those, then they're going to turn to mush. So I was reading about it, I'm like, yeah, you got to pressure can them for like 90 minutes. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Like, that's just a nightmare.
You know how I just finished the jar of gumbo. Remember my holiday gumbo? Mm-hmm. I froze 1 jar for like basically 2 servings. And I had been in January, I was just like, I'm going to wait until February. I have to wait until February. Like, because otherwise, why did I even freeze it? I could have just ate the rest of it. But I totally put that in a couple of jars and put them in the freezer. I use the ball jars for freezing as well. There are a couple of distinctions that you have to make, making sure there's head space, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I don't freeze in glass jars. I've had some issues. So,
yeah, I mean, there's definitely the potential of it. The shattering. I've not had it yet, but there's also some great regular plastic Tupperware you can use.
Right.
So,
yeah. So.
But it's a thing. Like I grew up with a lot of freezing instead, like that was the way that we preserve food. So it comes natural to me as far as that's where my mind goes.
I can see that. I'm going to freeze it for sure. The problem I have with freezing it is I usually, like right now in my freezer, I have a big thing of some kind of soup that I don't know what it is.
Well, I also I don't know what would you call it? Like the liquid from the gumbo. I froze that as well because at some point I had a bunch of it. I also invested in a new deep freezer last year, so you'll see me lean towards that a bit more. So that's just to be fair, be transparent there.
So did we cover off on the differences, you think, and enough tips to kind of get people going in their summer seeds? What do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
I think
so.
we did.
If you're listening to this and you just stumbled onto this episode, I should have said this in the beginning. So dumb. Go back and listen to the spring one because we really talk about the process of starting seeds. And then you can kind of, if you don't know how to start seeds, that'll help you because we talk about spring seeds and then we talk about how to start seeds in general. And so this is meant to kind of be a part 2, which we'll probably label it as a part 2. Would make sense. Duh. So, but that'll... that'll kind of help you get going with that. So I just, we talked about doing this and I think it's really good practice if you don't start all of your seeds, just to know what it takes to start seeds and to try every once in a while. Yeah. And I mean, even if you don't do a lot, like just start some of the easy ones like squash seed, or a melon. Don't go crazy.
If I could, I'm pretty big on like I experience what I experience when I need to experience it. But if I were to change a thing about kind of starting seeds, I would have started them earlier indoors when my garden was smaller.
Yeah. It's a lot easier when you have a smaller garden. Yep. It's more manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. Next week, we will continue with our seed conversation in some form or fashion. So be prepared for that. And we just really want these, we feel like this is the good time for you guys to get enough knowledge to get going and maybe push somebody into taking the jump. But thank you so much for being a part of the show. And we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you. And until next week.
6 weeks until spring.
Oh,
see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. Please follow us on YouTube at Backyard Gardens TV,
Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV, over on our website, backyardgardenstv.com, and then we have Patreon at Backyard Gardens.
And don't forget to check out our links below to help the show. Thank you so much for joining us as we learn to grow and grow for change. Cut.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya.
If you guys want some Backyard Gardens gear,
go to the link below and check out our t-shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and other gear.
All purchases go towards helping to support the show, so thank you so much in advance, and we hope you enjoy. We want everybody to have a garden, and we're going to give you a chance to win free seeds every month.
Head over to backyardgardenstv.com and enter your email address to be entered in all of our giveaways.
Good luck.
We want you to be a part of our gardening community. DM us a picture of your garden at Backyard Gardens TV on Instagram, and we will share it with our listeners.